Today we're up in Marblehead, which is a small, I'll say, fishing village, and doing a demonstration from a porch overlooking the city, primarily looking down on some rooftops, which I came to feel would be a great exercise in repeated shapes. You see me sketching the scene. I'm starting with the big foreground or close rooftops, and we're actually looking down on a distant small village that rises up on a hill behind everything. From this view, we see literally, 3 or 4 dozen rooftops. I'm simplifying that as best I can, with a focal area being this center rooftop and the chimney and its shadow. You see the repeated shapes of, well, they're very geometric. They could be rectangles and chimneys, large in the foreground, getting smaller as they recede towards the distance. To complement that, we have some ocean to the left, some trees above, but primarily an urban scene. We're looking down on the city. I'm starting with a yellow ochre to give myself an idea of the overall big shape, the connected shape of these smaller buildings to the larger ones in the foreground. I'm painting around rooftops at this point. The white spaces will be sunstruck rooftops. You see chimneys as well are being placed by a little bit of yellow ochre. And in the foreground, this area is going to be shadowed. We'll show some architecture, some windows, but we're going to try and keep it kind of vague so that we immediately are attracted to the shadows cast by chimneys and the striking light on the tops of these rooftops. As the yellow ochre starts to cure, starts to get a little stronger, you can see, I think you see my vision. You see the chimneys casting shadows on rooftops, the angles. Perspective is not a big issue here. There are a couple things that I'm thinking about, but in general I'm trying to get a variety of these repeated shapes. Now starting to apply the lighter tones, which would be in the sky, the distant sky. I've got the cerulean blue layered on top of yellow ochre. I'm letting some of that yellow ochre come through, going a little darker on the horizon and placing a few rising clouds. As I come down into the city, I'm going to be using a similar combination of colors, primarily cerulean blue with a little bit of burnt sienna and yellow ochre. But you'll notice I'm going much stronger. I'm taking advantage of the wet area on the horizon to place some distant foliage that gives it a softness which helps it to recede. And then as I come down the hill, as it were, I'm getting quite a bit darker, or a little more burnt sienna, a little more pigment to create that darkness. All the while I'm concentrating on isolating the rooftops. They appear to be floating above, and that's fine at this stage. Later on we can make them feel more like houses with chimneys and windows. There's some more of that sienna, and it's all applied wet into wet, so except for the rooftops, everything is kind of soft edge at this stage. And as it dries, it's going to lighten, and it'll feel even more distant. But I'll stay with this section until I feel I've got the basics accounted for. This was a distant bridge on the horizon. And then I started off with water and quickly moved to a cerulean and ultramarine blue in the lower part. I want to create a gradient here, which is describing the ocean as it comes down behind all of this, and I'm leaving it very bright near the horizon. Later on, a few boats